Pursuit of Podcast, a purely guest-centric show focusing on people and organizations that advance positive change. Positivity can be anywhere, and in a time of vast discord, the pursuit of is finding those who champion its causes loudest. Join us as we sit and learn about the pursuits of local leaders in their community. Let's go.
Hello, good people, and welcome to the Pursuit of Podcast, where it's truly not us, it's you. I'm Ryan Buck, Artist Development, New Leonard Media, and with me, as always, is the boss, Mark Wilson, President, New Leonard Media.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing really well. It's beautiful out.
It is. Nope, that's enough of that. With us today is Julie Clark, Executive Director, TART Trails. Julie, thank you for being here.
It is my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm going to start by saying I am a little bit starstruck because in researching this particular, and I probably should have said this off mic, but I'm just trying, in researching this podcast, your passion for the TART Trails and your charisma, coupled with the fact that probably my favorite thing about living here are the TART Trails.
Yay.
Truly. And so I'm a little bit starstruck because of what you've done. And so thank you really for being here. But looking back, most of your early career was spent in North Carolina, but you grew up in Indiana? Is that true?
You know, I did. I was an Air Force brat for a while. But most of my childhood is Indiana based. Yeah, Lafayette. So Purdue University, other side of the river.
That's a thing. There's a team there, right?
The Boilermakers are on the other, but that's the other side of the river. Not
a sports guy, so sorry, listeners who I've offended. But you moved to Traverse City specifically for this role. Is that right?
I did. We were in North Carolina. I was loving it. My husband wasn't. So we were looking around and the job at TART came up and I applied, and it was a long and awesome process, but yeah, it got me up here and it was pretty cool.
Well, you just opened the door for a question that I had later, but I'm going to ask it now. What was the interview process for this position? Because you'd think it was maybe like hand in hand walking through the woods, but was it a boardroom, like an austere boardroom with suits looking at you?
It was a lot of things. It was long. I had to fly up twice. My first meeting was a 7 a.m., I think, meeting.
Sounds fair.
Yeah, brutal. I don't do mornings. So I had to really up my game. And we were on the second floor of the Bank of Northern Michigan at the time. Now it's the Haggerty building there across from the post office. But it was a table full of gentlemen around a banking table. There was one woman there, and she was the HR person, Kate Green, whom I adore and work with today. But yeah, I was surrounded by a table of very inquisitive, very smart, and well-prepared men, including the executive director, Bob Otwell, on my right. It was an intense process, and it went all day. That was my intro, is a many, many hour around that board table interview session, and then a lot of walking and talking.
Pleasant illusion shattered of you hand in hand with people walking along the TART Trail.
We did that.
Oh, you did do that.
Later,
okay.
No hand in hand. They did not. No, none of that. There was a party involved, and this is how I knew that I was going to love this board. They put me up at the Park Place, which I believe you are very familiar with.
Yeah, I am.
And they were like, "Hey, you should come down for drinks." And I thought, "Oh, I like these people. I'm in."
Did you feel like it was a trap of any sort, or they're trying to gauge how you are socially as well?
You know, the pieces of advice I got before I left North Carolina, my boss at the time, he's like, "If they ask you to go to drinks, don't do it. Don't do it." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Interesting.
And then I did it because it was great and they were wonderful.
Wow.
And they had me at hello. They were amazing.
Wow. That's great.
I wonder what he was worried about.
Oh, it was the South, and I was a young woman at the time.
I was thinking his experience with her.
No.
Oh, he wasn't worried that you would say something, you get a little toasty and say something to...
No, I think it was a Southern gentleman thing where he was very, it was a different, I was called ma'am or little missy a lot when I worked in the South. Little miss.
Little missy.
Girl.
Dude,
So
those are words of disrespect up here.
Wow.
It would be weird now to hear that.
Well,
but
your previous experience was almost exclusively planning and development, and you'd been a director in this kind of capacity before.
Government.
Government. Did you feel well prepared when you arrived here, and what was it about Traverse City that lured you?
It's funny because I knew about Traverse City before I came up. I worked with Mark Vanderclip, who was at Corbin Design for a long time. And they did our wayfinding signage down there. We had hired them to do wayfinding. So I knew of Traverse City and used to make fun of it because he'd call in May and he's like, oh, we're going to go skiing. You're like, that's terrible.
That's entirely possible, ladies and gentlemen.
I think I may be exaggerating, but it felt like he said that in May.
Stranger things have happened.
Yeah, that is true.
I
Yeah.
believe we skied a couple Aprils ago in like late April.
Oh, of course. And it
Spring break
snowed
skiing.
like the June of 1996. It snowed up here.
I'm so glad I was not here in June of 1990. I would never have come here. So what hooked me was the town immediately. The story that we tell is my husband and I, when we were flying in, we looked, right? You fly into the airport and you see the water and you see the trees. And then my husband leans over and just said, don't screw this up.
Oh, man.
Oh,
That was our
Wow.
first interview.
just
here, yeah.
visually for him, he felt something flying in.
My husband's a water and woods guy. Grew up in the Everglades, or what were the Everglades. Later turned into Coral Springs and Fort Lauderdale mess down there.
Yeah.
So he was woods and water all the way, and
Wow.
he saw that, and he was home.
You have a bachelor's degree in mass communication from Miami of Ohio, where you graduated cum laude.
Go Red Hawks.
Nice. And this is a school that's in Ohio.
Yep,
for people
Southern
who are
Ohio.
confused,
That's
because
right.
we should clarify that.
We were a university before Florida was a state.
It's one of the older universities in the country.
18 something.
And that seems like a great school in general for what you do, because there's research components and things like that. But mass communication, what was your initial career goal? And does the skill set that you learned there apply to what you do now?
I had no career goal, I don't think. I changed my major 9 times.
Okay.
I wound up in mass communications because I didn't know what I wanted to do, really. And I had accumulated so many credits. I think it was by then, my junior year, and they were like, dude, you got to declare. So I had a major in mass communications, a minor in environmental studies, and then almost got my film minor, 1 credit short.
Oh.
I know.
Is that something you ever want to go back to and get, just so you have another thing?
No, I just like my Netflix now.
Okay.
So
Well, mass communication, that seems like a good catch-all. Mass communication, let's do
right?
that.
I thought I was going to go into the science field and kind of save the world by explaining science to all of us. Just dumb it down so people like me could understand what we could be doing better to live better, healthier.
We really needed you last year.
Well, I was more on the climate side and the wildlife. And I went to Washington, D.C. between my junior and senior year and lobbied because I thought, and then I didn't like that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You said before we started that you know nothing about science, but you hold a Master of Science degree, for which the Latin is Magisterium Scientiae.
Wow.
It sounds like a Harry Potter spell, I guess.
does.
Did you ever use the Latin? Because that sounds really rad.
I never. My
Okay.
husband would be very disappointed, the science teacher that he is.
Yeah, that was from the University of Florida. And that kind of seemed to indicate a redirection to your passion now. So
I
what
was
brought you
told to
there?
go get field work, like go get my boots muddy. I went to World Wildlife Fund and I wanted to work there in DC and do, kind of, again, change the world. And they said, go learn about the world, get dirty, get humbled, and then you can come back and you can try to tell other people what to do.
Who gave you that advice?
He was one of the directors at World Wildlife Fund. He's gone on to work at the National Park Foundation, do all kinds of things. But he was like a mentor that I really appreciated, was like, go, do and work and sweat and toil and get real
So
before
you know what to change, what to focus on.
and what people are fighting for and why they're fighting maybe against each other. Like, go understand both sides. So I worked in the Everglades for 2 years.
Really? That's real. That's messy stuff. That's really in it.
It was
And
really
dangerous?
in it.
Was it dangerous?
No.
No.
I mean, I could have gotten smushed by a sugar truck, but that's about it.
What a way to go.
So there wasn't like the python problem out there yet?
The python wasn't that bad. There were a lot of snakes, lots of snakes. It was hot and it was hard work and you don't get paid much. But I loved it because there were lots of snakes and I did alligator and crocodile work.
This points
It's
to your
amazing.
toughness because you said not dangerous. You've said alligators, snakes, chronic heat, sugar truck mashing. I think you're underselling this a little bit.
No, it was a lot of field work. It was a lot of research. I did get to see kind of all cross sections of South Florida and see how everybody was interacting or playing well together or not playing well together. The Everglades, it's kind of a hot mess down there. And I just really enjoyed the complications that it introduced. It wasn't black and white, Farms weren't good or bad, and wildlife biologists, not good, not bad. It was just a really good, eye-opening experience on what we do to the earth that we live on and why we do it, and understanding, I think, all the different perspectives.
Right. Well, that's interesting because in looking at your trajectory, I was wondering, and I think you answered the question, if you ever thought about going into teaching or going into academia, but it sounds like did this field work, that mentor, take you off that path for sure and assure that you would always be in the field, as it were?
Teaching, no, I don't have, I know what a good teacher looks like. I'm married to one, and I'm not that. I don't have patience for that. I don't have that. It's a gift. I really do think the good ones have a gift. I don't have it. Academia, I ended up doing my master's degree at Florida. And what I loved about it was I love research. I love finding out why about things and, what makes things and people tick and why the whys. I love the whys. And my team at TART make fun of me. They have really funny little marks for me. Some of them are very inappropriate and I won't share out loud. But I'm a data nerd and you can't give me too much information. Sometimes they want to kill me because I ask for so much information before I want to make a decision.
Right.
Or why they made a decision. I want to know all the whys. But the data part was cool. But what I, again, found working academia, we wrote a lot of plans and we worked with a lot of communities, is universities would come in with these great ideas and great plans. But, oh my God, not executing on that stuff when it was created in a university lab, so to speak, that was tough.
Right.
I wanted to see the change on the ground and work with the communities. And, you do university research, you leave a paper or a plan and you walk away.
Yeah. Well, I feel like anything that has an environmental impact, that's a good trait to have, is overanalysis. Right? And it has an impact on people too.
Yeah.
Right?
It does.
So the TART essentially, if I have this right, formed in 1998, 1999.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And what made it come together was kind of interesting because there were different associations, organizations, maybe even ownership stakes in that.
Yep.
Has that changed at all? Is that structure, what's the back of the house look like now? Or is it the same as it was back then?
No, it's very different now. So even the board makeup was different. When the 4 groups formed, so there were 4 separate trail organizations, and they were really all doing their own thing. And what TART kind of ask them all to do is, hey, figure out your priorities and figure out how to work together. And then we all have a common goal. Let's try to work for the common goal, which means sometimes people had to wait or compromise. And so even when the board was put together, it was representatives from the Leelanau Trail, the TART Trail, the Vasa, and the boardman. And that was the board. Mm-hmm. Those distinctions are no longer there. Now, my founders are all still around. So the women and men, not all. We lost Ted Okerstrom and a couple others along the way. But the founders are mostly still there and still super passionate about the trails that they helped form.
Wow.
And I just have a huge amount of respect and debt of gratitude to all of them that gave, because that was voluntary blood, sweat, and tears that they put into it and their life to bring these trails to fruition. Tim Brick is one of the founders of the TART Trail, and he's still living it and breathing it every day. Dave Monstray, one of the founders of the Leelanau Trail, actually hosts a stop and is still to this day working every Tuesday and Thursday on the trail. I mean, they don't ever go away, give up, and their expectations are so high. To try to meet them is a constant goal for us.
It's amazing that you were able to integrate and create a unified system. I feel like that's rare, that you're able to do something like that.
I think it's all those guys and gals in the beginning who were really able to put away their egos. And
that's where I was going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So when you arrived and you became more immersed in your position, was there anything right away that concerned you or opportunities that stood out immediately?
Yeah. One of the first weeks I was sat down by Gene Dorenzi and Chuck Korn. Anyway, I was sat down with the city and the township, and Gene Dorenzi called us all together and said, there's this thing you need to know about, and that's the Boardman Lake Trail, and we need to get this done. That was one of my first weeks on the job. So yeah, there was an opportunity
Wow.
right there.
Right there.
Right when and look, that was 11 years ago, and we're just about to.
So the recording of this podcast is quite poignant because there's a lot of news about you and what you're doing, and I think positive news, which is pretty great.
The U, I'm going to just be clear here. The U is TART.
The U is
There's
TART.
no Julie. It's the U is TART. Just to be
Very
super clear.
selfless. Well, to that point, and you look at the historic development of TART, when you arrived, there was a lot of activity pretty quickly and a lot of progress. So how do you look back on that initial first few years?
Oh, golly, yeah. I mean, I think we got 40 miles of trail on the ground my first 5 years. So it was an accelerated pace that is a little bit mind-numbing today. So Sleeping Bear Heritage Trail, that was an opportunity just right there, ready to go. We had no idea it was going to go. Leelanau Trail, a grant came in. I mean, we had to raise massive amounts of money, which I'd never done before because I was government, so I had tax dollars.
Right?
It was very different. You have to be very, very careful with both private or tax. Those are, to me, just as precious as private donors, but to raise private dollars was a new ballgame.
Well,
But
we talk
did it.
about that a lot on the podcast with nonprofits and how that's a misnomer and how grant money and how, tenuous that can be. Can you talk a little bit to that, your experience with that? Because I think there's a misnomer out there about how, they have all this money and people donate, and it's not really the case.
It's fun. My mom was asking me that just this weekend. She was like, well, how do you pay your staff? And I said, well, we raise the money every year because we are 93% supported by private dollars. So those are individuals or foundations like Rotary or Olson that help support our work. And it's an annual lift. So we don't really get federal grants. In the trail world, most of the construction money comes to our state and federal and local agencies, so road commissions or cities.
Sure.
So that's where, if, for example, the Boardman Lake Trail is going to be a $6 million project, let's say, most of that is coming from local sources, whether that's brownfield or state funds. So we help write all those grants most times to get that public funding in. So that's what TART staff is doing
Right.
or hiring out. And then, for example, with the Boardman, we raised over $1 million in addition to that money to partner with our public. So it really is a true public-private partnership
Right.
to bring these trails to fruition, which is different than when I was in North Carolina. When I was in North Carolina, it was all public. It was
Right.
100% like taxpayer funded. It was a flip when I got here. Not quite set up the same way. So I had to learn a lot here.
And you knew that going in. It was just, you knew that you had to learn.
I knew I had to learn. That's what I knew.
Yeah.
I knew I had worked on some nonprofit boards. I'd seen what dysfunctional nonprofits look like. I'd never seen a functional one. So TART was pretty great because we were pretty functional.
Yeah.
Bob Otwell did an amazing job sort of laying a foundation there that we could work from.
Well, I mean, you had that initial night out, with some drinks, and you created your shorthand. Do you remember what you had? Did you go conservative?
I
Just
did. I think I had a glass of red wine.
There you go.
They did not know my love of bourbon then, so which is probably good.
And you mentioned staff. So you currently have 10 official staff members about?
Yeah, about.
So when you look at somebody joining your team, what qualities does somebody have to possess to be on your team? What is something that if they don't have it, it's a deal breaker?
They have to love the mission of TART. They have to. They just have to groove on helping people find their way around on foot and on their bikes. So that's
And
number one.
how do you find that out? I mean, it's easy for somebody to say, oh, I've got passion for this. Is it just you have a feeling, it's instinct, or is there something they can do or demonstrate? Show up for the interview on a bike, for example, like you showed up to this this recording, which is real on brand. How do they demonstrate that?
I try to make sure that I'm being real open-minded, but I think one of the ways that has been demonstrated is they volunteer with us. Almost everybody on my staff has been involved with trails in one way or another, so they've given their time or talents. One of my board members ended up being a staff. That was weird because it's like you're hiring your boss. But it was great. It was an amazing fit. So for me, it's not too hard to dig into that authenticity, like you can talk a good game, but we have a really pretty in-depth hiring process, and I always bring in outside and board members' help and staff. All my
Sure.
staff meet everybody anytime we hire.
So is it a similar process to you? Do you put them in a big room and surround them in a circle and
No.
intimidate them for 2 days? See if they got the grit?
No, but we ask them some good questions, I think.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the board. Is the board 100% volunteer-based?
Yep.
And what are the terms and how diverse is the current board? And furthermore, how important is it to have a diverse board for TART?
Well, like I said at the beginning, I took this job because of the board. I thought, oh man, if I get to work with people like this, like these are the kind of people leading our organization, I'm in. And the board, I was terrified the kind of first board transition that we had. We have 3-year terms. Some board members serve maybe 2 terms. We don't actually have term limits. It's something we've talked about but never really done because
Sure.
it's been a very fluid evolution on the board. And anyway, that's a podcast for a different podcast.
Check out your board podcast.
Right.
Dish on
Good
your
board governance. So I love my board. I trust them implicitly to give me and staff some sound direction and guidance. I love how enthusiastic they get. We do have a pretty diverse board, both in age and backgrounds. And I'm excited that we have a little bit more representation in, kind of who is around the region. So we do have older, younger, male, female, just different, kind of races and religions on there. And
Wow.
I'm really excited about them.
When you said, I love how enthusiastic they get, sometimes that's a euphemism for like a real pain. But you said it, ladies and gentlemen, it was very sincere. She meant enthusiastic, not the other thing. But you've also mentioned, and you opened doors for a lot of good questions, but you mentioned volunteers. And you count on a lot of volunteers. Now, what has the last year and a half done to your volunteer pool? And are you struggling now, or did you through all the COVID and everything like that?
Well, again, the volunteers we have, so we have 121, they're called ambassadors. They're our frontline kind of folks who are out there all the time working for the trails. One of that ambassador crew is called the Leelanau Trail Crew, and they're guys. They're a group of guys who are out every Tuesday and Thursday who maintain that trail. They're the ones that you see clearing brush or repairing the asphalt. We actually own that Leelanau Trail between Traverse City and Sutton's Bay, so it's our responsibility. They were out there all during the pandemic, so they were deemed essential workers because the influx of people that we saw on the trails, they were out there making sure that those trails were safe and operational so that we could all get out and stay active and healthy. And what we saw was we did have to put a pause on kind of a lot of our volunteer opportunities. Typically, volunteers come in many different forms, but one of the factors I think that draws them is that ability to meet others or to socialize and have that sense of community. And that was really hard to do during COVID. So we tried to either send out households or individuals so that they could still go to work, but we did have to put a pause. We followed the governor's orders pretty much to the T to make sure we were keeping people safe. And now volunteers are back with a vengeance. They're coming in new, and all the folks that used to work with us are right back in. And the minute we opened the gates back open, so to speak, they were there. I mean, they're doing everything. They did the big transformation plantings. So we have artwork going in on the TART. They're doing that.
Really? Where's that going to be?
That's going to be right near TBA ISD and the Cherry Capital Airport. That's part of we redid, and this is another thing I love working with TART on, is it takes all of us to take care of our communities. And so like the TART transformation is a partnership between the city of Traverse City, Grand Traverse County, East Bay Township, Cherry Capital Airport, and then, volunteers, very specific, like helping bring in landscaping. We have a new piece of art that's going in there. So it'll be a metallic structure. So it's like a
Very
bench
cool.
seating. And we widened that trail. So it was like an 8-foot wide. That was the original trail. That trail right between Woodmere and 3 Mile was one of the first stretches of the TART, built in John Robert Williams is going to kill me because I don't remember my dates. I don't know my kids' birthdays, so how am I going to remember anything? 1990.
Okay.
Let's say 95.
All right, nobody's going to refute you in this room. 1995, everybody.
Or
that was the
wait,
first
it was 30
section.
years ago. So somebody do the math. 1990.
That would have been 91.
91. Thank
Yeah.
you, Mark. There's a winner. I'm not the Matt.
We got there together as a team.
There we
That
go.
felt good.
See, all about collaboration. That's what I'm saying.
Well, how many miles do you have now, and what's the vision for the next 5 years? Are you looking at it like that?
We do. So 100 miles thereabouts of trail on the ground today that we are involved with in one shape or another. In the next 20, we'd like to double that, so another 100 miles.
Wow.
In this next year alone, we have about 5 miles that'll go on the ground. So that's pretty exciting. And then, there's some big ones out there like the Nequema Trailway that connects up to Charlevoix and Acme. That's going to be 46 plus miles.
Gosh, it's exciting.
Yeah.
So is there an aspect of your job that would be surprising for a layperson to hear? Is there anything about your day-to-day that would be like, wow, she has to do that, or that's interesting?
My day-to-day, I think people think I'm on the trails a lot more. It's not surprising or interesting. It's sort of sad. I'm in a lot of meetings.
What's sad about your job? I didn't want to frame it that way, but here we are.
Well, I'm a half-glass empty gal. No, I think people do think like I'm on the trail all the time. And mostly I'm in meetings to try to get more trail on the ground or kind of get all the cats together. I think one of the more interesting parts, I'm trying to think like what is...
Or surprising, or you already knocked out sad.
You know what it is, Ryan, is like sometimes the things that we're going to find very interesting and intriguing, she doesn't think about. Because,
you find mundane.
Yeah, because it's your day to day, and we have no idea.
It's a good point. The idea that one of us could be biking on the TART Trail, and you're just sitting there, with weather experimentation, trying to gauge, gradients and stuff.
Dipping art. Yeah. How thick is that asphalt?
There's Julie. But the reality is there's a lot of administration. There's a lot of advocacy. Advocacy.
You got it.
Don't edit that out. I'm human. I'm frail. And, you need to, again, connect a lot of pieces, aside from a staff that you have and volunteers that you need to motivate and maintain, and new artwork that you need to facilitate and all of that.
Yeah, I love that I have somebody on my staff who knows all about art, because we had a program that sat there, and then Caitlin came, and now we have art on the TART, and it's awesome.
Okay, is that a coin term? Art on the TART?
Art on the TART. It is a program.
It can't be the first time it was said.
No. It's a real thing, and you will see it at 10th Street Trailhead. You will see it by TBA ISD. You'll see it at the Time to Let Go statue that's there.
I'm still thrilled with the planets.
Oh, the planets are awesome. Yeah, that's a physics teacher from the area that did all that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
Mr. Kirby.
How much of TART's annual success has been based on events that you hold? And did COVID affect those, or were you lessened because you're outdoor? I mean, because there were less restrictions outdoor, but were you affected by that as well?
Yeah, we got hit. So events don't make up a large part of our revenue stream, which is good, because events are always, kind of hit and miss depending on weather, because we are an outside organization. So that part certainly, again, we followed the Gov's orders, and she said don't, so we didn't. So we didn't have our normal events. Again, record use of trails out there, which is awesome, but we didn't pull people together. So it's really nice. Like this week, tomorrow's the end of Smart Commute Week. And that was just been, I think I don't remember what year we're in. If we're in 28 or 30, Bob Otwell will kill me on that one too.
This is a perilous podcast for you.
Oh, it is. The numbers are not my friends. But it's been a tradition before TART was started to have Smart Commute Week. And to miss that last year, like the camaraderie and the community building that occurs in these events was a bummer. But you do things, like it was serious. So we took it seriously. And this year we're back. We're safe. It's great. But like Smart Commute, we were having record numbers attend, again, in a really comfortable way. Tour de TART will be back this year. So we definitely took a hit, but it was a purposeful hit that we took. So.
Well, and you mentioned the governor. Does your position take you to Lansing very often? Is there any kind of advocacy?
Okay, there are some good things about COVID, and one of them is Zoom meetings. So yeah, I used to have to go to Lansing. My kids hated it. I don't know, twice a month or so.
Really?
I serve on a couple state boards. One is for Trails, Michigan Trails and Greenways Alliance. So that's the statewide trail organization. So I'm the board president for that. And then I serve on the Michigan State Parks Advisory Committee, which today was big news for state parks. There was a $250 million COVID allocation that the governor has proposed.
Excellent.
For state parks and trails maintenance to really bring everybody up.
And how is that an amount that's significantly impactful?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Because it sometimes can be relative, and you think, is that impactful? That sounds like it is.
It is impactful. I think the guesstimated budget on that backlog of maintenance was anywhere from 250 to 300 million. So getting 250 million, that wipes a pretty clean slate. Now, Maintenance is maintenance, so it's ongoing.
Sure.
But yeah, that was a huge
That's
proposal.
phenomenal.
Yeah, that was good news.
I had read in an article that rightly calls you the woman who built Traverse City's recreational trails.
Not rightly? No. Oh, I did not like that.
This is just my opinion.
Well,
because your humility is clear, the listeners can get. But in this article, you confess to being, quote, the worst person to walk with. Do you still maintain and support that statement?
I think so. Mark maybe can attest. We weren't on a trail, so I wasn't quite as critiquey.
The new sidewalk project through the neighborhood here. We had a walking meeting recently when we discussed having her on the podcast and a few other common interests.
I don't think I was sometimes I get frothy and really, you get me walking with like Gary Howe and Tim Warner and oof, watch out. We steamroll and it's not pretty.
So does this enthusiasm, as you put it, preclude you from enjoying what you are building and sustaining? Or can you turn it off sometimes?
No, I can never turn it off. But it doesn't preclude me from enjoying it. It may preclude all the others around me. And I know my staff is always like, oh, God, she's been on the trails. Because I just email or text like, you need to go look at this.
Right.
But no, because all you're doing when I see this stuff is think of ways to do things better. Or what we could do next time, or, oh, look at this. Like, no, it's energizing.
So what about when you visit similar trails other places? Are you just like, these guys are doing it wrong? Oh, my God. Can you enjoy it then and maybe laugh at how bad they're doing it compared to TART?
Oh, I am that awful kind of person who is very critical of me.
I'm getting what you're laying down,
Yeah,
but I don't
so
know
I
if
think
it's totally justified. Just again, our podcast opinion.
Well, I tend to then see mostly the positives of other places. So what I pick up is, oh my gosh, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to do that. Did you see that? So, and my husband's way worse. We have pictures of him like lying in bike lanes and, what's that? Oh my God, what's that place in California? Silicon Valley. And he had he's lying across and he's smashing himself in the middle of a bike lane. He's like, look how wide these bike lanes are. And it was a bad thing.
So things can be learned from,
oh my gosh.
You wouldn't call them competitors, right? You just call them
colleagues, other places.
Other places.
Yeah.
Counterparts.
Oh, that's a good one, Mark.
That is a good one. So finally, it may be a little personal, but
tend to overshare.
I need to know, and you mentioned bourbon, but do you still ride a tandem bike with your husband, Bill, and can you still win the occasional tequila competition?
Oh my gosh, how did you know about the tequila competition?
I'm just asking a question that may have been, I don't know where it came from, but do you still ride a tandem bike with your husband, and can you still win the occasional tequila competition?
Okay, still ride a bike with my husband, and I am not too proud to say he was right. I will say it out loud for the world to hear. He was right. And once we learned how to communicate, and it's very good therapy, it's marriage therapy, because you can be mad as all get out with your spouse or your partner, but you have to talk on that thing. Otherwise, you both fall, and it's no fun. So he was right. We do ride it, and now I can't go down hills. I kind of got. I don't like speed. I can't. Staff again will tell you that I don't do speed downhill well. So tandem, I just close my eyes and I let him go. and it's pretty amazing.
Wow, it's a little Butch and Sundance. You got raindrops keep falling on my head.
do
and you're
sing
trying to
that
find
sometimes.
Zen. Do you really?
Oh my God, yeah. It's
Wow.
A great song.
And tequila? No? Have you stopped competing in the professional tequila circuit?
I am now a lightweight. I'm sad that those days are behind me. My roommate who had to pick me up after that one that I won and got the t-shirt for, she would argue that perhaps I don't remember my skills as well as I think I did.
Well, you were cultivating your professional persona as well at the time. It's
Well,
good
now I
balance.
enjoy it, though. You know,
true.
like I don't need to win. I win by being able to pick out the better tequila instead of the well stuff.
Right.
Like I can tell the
You've
difference
developed a
between
palate.
well. Yes.
Yeah. Well, how can listeners support TART? I mean, we talked about volunteers. What are the other ways?
Oh, there's so many ways to support TART. One is absolutely volunteer. Go to the website, learn all about us. Clearly, we'd love you to donate. That's awesome. But most importantly, like use your voices. To support TART is awesome, but let's support our community in walkable, bikeable places. So speak up at your community, whether you live in a township or the city. Let your elected official know what you like and what you don't like. They love to hear what you like because nobody ever shares that part.
Right.
Let them know when they're doing a good job. When that new sidewalk comes in that just zigged around that tree, or maybe it was just a zag just because.
Is there a distinction between a zig and a zag?
I think
you're a professional. Can you put this to rest? Because I've never known. I think I was zigging and maybe I was zagging.
Yeah, all I know is I've zigged when I was supposed to zag.
So you know when you do it wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Well, the website is traversetrails.org.
TraverseTrails.org.
TraverseTrails.org, and you can donate directly. Is there
Oh,
a button?
of course you can. A very big button that says
There's
donate.
a big button,
Yeah.
and you can learn about the TART Trails. You can find the trail that may best suit you.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any bad. It's flat and it's convenient and it's beautiful. I moved here from Chicago, where biking and walking could be a danger at any time. So
Bit of a
having
sport there.
Among other things.
what you have is so amazing. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, I will say that our vision is that every home is a trailhead. That's what we want to get to. And that's really all of us that'll need to work together to do that. But we want you to be able to go out your door, safely walk or bike to get anywhere you want to go. So that's our
Easily
goal.
accessible and
Easily
safely.
accessible, safe, free, comfortable, convenient.
Oh, that's amazing. Not like you've ever said that before.
So, maybe.
Well, Julie, thank you so much for your pursuits, and to all those who pursue along with you, sustaining and expanding the amazing Traverse area recreational trails and allowing all of us to experience it and love it just as much as you do. Probably not even close to as much as you do, but thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And to you, our listeners, thank you so much for listening, and thank you for pursuing the positive.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us again on the Pursuit of Podcast. Big thanks to our guest, Julie Clark, for joining us from TART. That's Traverse Area Recreational and Transportation Trails. Can be found at traversetrails.org. For those not from northern Michigan, the word is also traversetrails.org. And a big shout out to our supporters at the Tin Lid Hat Company, tinlidco.com. Use promo code THEPURSUITOF for 40% off to our listeners. And for audio visual inquiries, podcasting, check out newleonard.com.